Daf Yomi, Tractate, Avodah Zarah, page 59. Starting at the bottom of 58b, there was a certain barrel of wine from which the stopper had been removed, and the wine was spilling out. A Gentile came, jumped up and placed his hand on the hole to prevent the wine from leaking. Rav Papa said any wine that is adjacent to the stopper is prohibited, as it was touched by the Gentile. Now we turn to 60a, top of the page. V'idach shari v'ikadamri Rav Papa ad barza, in brackets it says barza, chamra asir v'idach shari. But the other wine in the barrel is permitted. There are those who say, that Rav Papa said, the wine until the stopper, meaning in the upper portion of the barrel, is prohibited, but the other wine in the barrel below the stopper is permitted. Amar v'yemar ketanai v'chavis shenikva ben mipia ben mishuleha uben mitzideha v'nagabot kol yom tmea. Rav Yehuda omer mipia u'mishulea tmea mitzidea tohera mikan u'mikan. Rav Yemar says Rav Papa's ruling is subject to a dispute between Tanaim. As the Mishnah teaches in Tiful Yom 2:7, in the case of a barrel that was pierced, whether on its top or on its bottom, or on one of its sides, if one who immersed that day touched it, it is ritually impure. Rav Yehuda says, if it was pierced on its top or on its bottom, it is impure. If it was pierced on one of its sides, the wine is pure. Whether it was touched from here or from there, meaning on either side, only the wine that he touched is rendered impure. According to the first version of Rav Papa's statement, he holds in accordance with the opinion of Rav Yehuda. Amar Rav Papa goy Adena v'Isroel Akuba Chamra Asir my timer Kikati Mikoach Goy Kati Israel Adena v'Goy Akuba Chamra Shari Yimizad Tzedodi Asir. Rav Papa says, in the case where a Gentile is pouring the wine from the barrel and a Jew is holding the beaker into which it is poured, the wine is prohibited. What is the reason? When the wine comes out of the barrel, it comes out by force of the Gentile's action. In a case where the Jew is pouring the wine from the barrel and the Gentile is holding the beaker into which it is poured, the wine is permitted. But if the Gentile tilts the beaker to the side, the wine is prohibited. Amar Rav Papa, hi goy, tidari zika, because in Israel acharei, Maria shari de lo mekarkesh, chasira asir dilma mekarkesh, kuba Maria asir dilma naga, chasira shari de lo naga. Rav Papa says, in the case of this Gentile who carries a sealed wineskin and a Jew is walking behind him and ensuring that the Gentile does not touch the wine itself, the halacha depends on the circumstances. If the wineskin is full, the wine is permitted, as the wine in the wineskin is not shaken. If the wineskin is incompletely filled, the wine is prohibited, as perhaps the wine in the wineskin might have been shaken by the Gentile, which would have the same halacha as wine poured as a libation. In the case of the beaker, which is open on top, if it is full, the wine is prohibited, and as perhaps the Gentile might have touched the wine. If the breaker is incompletely filled, the wine is permitted, as the Gentile did not touch the wine. Rav Ashi Amar Zika Ben Maria Ben Chasira Shari Ma'itama Ben Ein Derech Nisuch B'Kach. Ravashi says, in the case of a wineskin, whether it is full or incompletely filled is permitted. It is permitted. What is the reason that the wine is permitted, even if it is shaken within the wineskin? It is because this is not the typical manner of offering a libation. Ma'atzra Zarah, Rav Papi Shari Ravashi V'itema, Rav Shim Varashi Asar. With regard to a wine press where the grapes are pressed with beams rather than trod by foot, Rav Papi deems permitted wine that is produced by a Gentile, as a Gentile does not touch the wine. Varashi, and some say it was Rav Shimi Varashi, deemed the wine prohibited. Yehoshua, Kuli Alma, no pligi asir, ki pligi b'koach kocho, yikade amri b'koach kocho. Kuli Alma, no pligi nishare, ki pligi b'kocho. Avodah b'koach kocho. Asarav Yaakov in God. The Gemara comments in a case where the wine is pressed by means of the Gentiles' direct force. Everyone agrees that the wine is prohibited. They disagree when the wine is pressed by means of a force generated by his force. Conversely, there are those who say that in a case where the wine is pressed by means of a force generated by the Gentiles' force, everyone agrees that the wine is permitted. They disagree when the wine is pressed by means of the Gentiles' direct force. The Gemara relates there was an incident in which wine was pressed by means of a force generated by the Gentiles' force, and Rav Yaakov from Nahar Pekod deemed the wine prohibited. Ahu Chavita, the Gemara relates there was a certain barrel of wine, and now we turn to, it's very interesting because a great rabbi, well-known, respected Rabbi Beryl Wine, passed away today, and the daf when he passed away was daf 58 and 59 today. His Leviah was today. It talks about a barrel of wine. His name was Rabbi Beryl Wine. It's very interesting. The Gemara relates there was a certain barrel, the ipak ka'a urka idri ahugo ichab v'sharira from barbaba yitim aravuna bar Yehoshua as avoni legoim. Right, we've turned on to 60b right now. As avoni legoim behind mini dbeka leurka avalabutaya afilu b'shtiya sharim v'tam ma'aseh lebena kavit. There was a certain barrel that split lengthwise from top to bottom, and a certain Gentile jumped up and encircled it with his arms in order to prevent the wine from spilling. Rav Bar Papa, and some say it was Ravuna, the son of Yehoshua, deemed it permitted to sell the wine to Gentiles, as the wine was rendered prohibited only for drinking, but not with regard to traffic benefit. The Gemara notes this statement applies only in the case where it's split lengthwise, but where the barrel split widthwise and the Gentile held the top and bottom halves together is permitted even for drinking. What is the reason that the wine is permitted? The Gentile is merely performing the action of a brick by weighing the barrel down, and he is not doing anything to the wine. Gemara relates, there was a certain Gentile who was found standing in a wine press. Ravashi said, if there is enough wine in the wine press that it is moist enough to moisten other items, the wine press requires rinsing and requires a more thorough cleansing, as the Gemara will explain in 74p. But if there's not enough wine to moisten other items, merely rinsing is sufficient for it. Okay, and now we start the new Mishnah. We're starting the new Mishnah. And now we're starting the new Mishnah. Nach שנמצא בצד הבור של יין, אם יש לו מדבר עליו אסור, ואינו מדבר עליו מותר. In the case of a Gentile who was found standing next to the wine collection vat, if there is a loan owed by the owner of the wine vat to the Gentile, the wine is prohibited. Since the Gentile maintains that he has a right to the owner's property, he has no compunctions about touching the wine. But if there is no loan owed by the owner of the wine, vat to the Gentile, the wine is permitted, as it is assumed that the Gentile did not touch the wine that was not his. It is et hatzira bekane, or shehayim etavech al pi chavis merutachas. B'chol elu haya maaseh v'amru imachar v'Rabbi Shimon matir nata v'sachavis uzraka v'chamaso lebo ze haya maaseh v'hichshiru. If a Gentile fell into the wine collection vat and emerged from it, or if he measured the wine in the winepress with a pole without touching it with his hands, or if he cast a hornet out of the wine by means of a pole, and the pole touched the wine, or where the Gentile was removing the foam that was on top of a fermenting barrel of wine. Here we go, barrel of wine again, barrel of wine. With regard to all these cases, there was such an incident. The sages said the wine may be sold to Gentiles, as it is permitted to derive benefit from the wine but not to drink it. And Rabbi Shimon deems the wine permitted even for drinking. In a case where a Gentile took the barrel of wine and threw it in his anger into the wine collection vat, this was an incident that occurred, and the sages deemed the wine fit for drinking. Okay? Gemara. The Talmud says, Amar Shmuel v'hu sheyesh lo milveh ala so yain. The Mishnah teaches that in a case of a Gentile who was found standing next to a wine collection vat, if the owner of the vat owes money to the Gentile, the wine is prohibited. Shmuel says, and this halach applies only when the loan includes the qualification that the Gentile has a lien on that wine, as only then does the Gentile feel that he is entitled to touch the wine. Amar Ravashi masnisu namideka itnahan amitaher yeino shanache v'toisnet bershusoi v'hano v'aisivlo יתקבל ממך מויס בוטו אבל אם ירצה ישראל להציע ואין מניחה עד שייתן המועצה זה היה מעשה בבית שען ואסור. Rashi said the wording of the Mishnah is also precise according to Shmuel's interpretation, as we learned in the following Mishnah 61a. In the case of a Jew who renders the wine of a Gentile permitted by treading the Gentile's grapes so that the wine can be sold to Jews, and he then places the wine in the Gentile's domain until he sells it, the halacha depends on the circumstances. If that one, meaning the Gentile, writes for the Jew, I receive money from you in payment for the wine, even though he did not yet receive the actual payment, the wine is permitted. This is because the wine is considered the Jew's property, and there is no reason to suppose that the Gentile might touch it. But in a case where the Jew desires to remove the wine, and the Gentile does not allow him to do so until the Jew gives him the money due to him, this was an incident that occurred in Beit Sha'an, and the sages deemed the wine prohibited. Time of Menichoi, Menichoi Shali, Shpamina, Mirvel Oisa, Yain Veina, Shpamina. Ravashi explains the reason that the wine is prohibited is that the Gentile does not allow the Jew to remove the wine, and therefore the Gentile is considered to have some degree of ownership of the wine. Therefore, one can infer that if the Gentile allows him to remove the wine is permitted, even though the Jew still owes him money. One may conclude from the Mishnah that in order for the wine to be prohibited, we require the loan to include the qualification that the Gentile has a lien on that wine. The Gemara affirms, one may conclude Shmuel's principle from the Mishnah. Nafal bal ve'ala amar papa shalala shalaves aval chai asu v'tayma papa didami aleha ale kiyom edam. The Mishnah teaches that if a Gentile fell into the wine collection vat and emerged, it is not prohibited to derive benefit from the wine. The Prophet says the sages taught this halacha only in the case where the Gentile emerged from the vat dead. But if he emerged alive, the wine is prohibited. The Gemara asks, what is the reason that the wine is prohibited? The Prophet said, since the Gentile was rescued from death, he considers that day like their festival day, and he offers the wine as an idolatrous libation in thanksgiving. לרבי שמעון ברכות על חשו כשהוא מתיר אפילו שיעו יוחשו עשר אפילו בנו. The Mishnah teaches that if a Gentile measures the wine press of the pole, or if he casts out a hornet of the wine by means of a pole, or if you remove the foam on top of a fermenting barrel of wine, with regard to all these cases there was such an incident, and the sages said that the wine may be sold to Gentiles, but one may not drink it. Rabbi Shimon deems the wine permitted even for drinking. Rabbi Avodah says, may blessings rest upon Rabbi Shimon's head, as his reasoning is clear. When he deems the wine permitted, he deems it permitted even with regard to drinking, and when he deems the wine prohibited, he deems it prohibited even with regard to driving benefit from it. Okay? Amar Rav Chiza Amar Rav ve'amri la. Amar Rav Chiza Amar Ziri Rabbi Shimon Yikadabri. Amar Rav Chiza Amar li Abba Bar Chanan Haki Amar Ziri. Halacha Rabbi Shimon. Ein halacha Rabbi Shimon. Rav Chiya son of Abba Bar Nachmani said that Rav Chizah says that Rav says, and some say that Rav Chizah says that Zeiri says. The halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. There are those who say that Rav Chizah says, Abba Bar Chanan said to me, this is what Zeiri says. The halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. Despite this, the Gemara concludes, but the halacha is not in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. Natzalcha b'zuzarka b'chamato, it's in brackets, nabo, ze hayamase v'hichshiru. Amar Rashi, kol shevazav tamei b'goy, osi yayin nesech. Kol shevazav ta'or b'goy, eino oisin yayin nesech. The Mishnah teaches with regard to the case where a Gentile took a barrel of wine and threw it in his anger into the wine vat, collection vat, and this was an incident that occurred, and the sages deemed the wine fit for drinking. Rav Ashi says with regard to any form of contact through which a Zarah renders an object ritually impure, in a case where a Gentile has that same type of contact with wine, he renders it wine used for a libation. In the case of any form of contact through which a Zav does not transmit ritual impurity, leaving an object ritually pure, a Gentile does not render the wine with which he has contact wine used for libation. Not yayin nesach. Ir se eis ve Rav Rashi not a chavis uzalcha bechamato labal ze haya maseh bebeit sha'an yichshiru chamato ein shelo bechamato lo. Rav Huna raised an objection to Rav Ashi for the Mishnah with regard to the case where the Gentile took the barrel of wine and threw it in his anger into the wine collection vat. This was an incident that occurred in Bet She'an, and the sages deemed the wine fit for drinking. One may infer that if the Gentile threw the wine in his anger, yes, it is permitted, but if he was not in anger, the wine is not permitted, even though in the case of a Zav, if he threw an object at a vessel, it does not render the vessel impure.